What's up, everybody? It's Frederick Douglass Bussey, and we are back for the third podcast of the day. You may just be watching one, this may be your first, whatever the case may be. We're super excited to have our guests for today, and I can't wait for you to hear what they have to share about who they are and what they're up to. For those of you who are checking out the podcast on YouTube, we're encouraging you to like it, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so we can continue to bring out more great content. If you're watching this on Facebook, make sure you enable StreamYard to show your name so we can get your comments in here as well. Like, subscribe, share, tell other people about what we're doing here as we continue to bring more great content for entrepreneurs as they want to grow and scale their businesses and creating lives of freedom and powerful impact as always. So without further ado, we're going to get started here in just a second. Welcome to Power Lunch. Let's go. Welcome to Power Lunch. This is Frederick Douglass Bussey, and I'm excited to have our guest for today. She is an entrepreneur, and I guess you would say one of the smarter entrepreneurs that you're ever going to meet, just by the topic alone, by what she does and how she helps people. She has 8 locations for her business, and I'm going to let her share with you exactly what it is and what it does. But please welcome with me none other than Ms. Melissa Hergert. How are you, Melissa?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad to do it. I have known you for a little while. We've met through our friend Michael Faber. And I got the opportunity to hear you speak on a stage where I was also speaking at this same event. And your presentation was incredible. It made me curious. It appealed to my nerdy side as well, to be able to kind of dig deeper into the information that you share. And why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay. Well, I am originally from San Diego. I live in Atlanta. I came here back in 2007. My mom, sister, and brother originally from here. They moved to San Diego in 82, and then I was born the next year. I'm from a mixed family. My sister, we have same mom, different dads, but she was born in the 70s. So our mom's white and my sister is black. And she was born in the 70s in Buckhead, Georgia. And so as you can imagine, like a white woman with a black child in the 70s in Atlanta. So they took off, and that's how I ended up being born in California. So then I ended up never thinking I would live here in Atlanta. I actually moved here to get away from a very toxic relationship. And my mom was here taking care of my grandfather. So I was like, I'm just going to go visit for a month. I ended up staying, and I attended Life University, which is a chiropractic college here. And I thought I was going to be a chiropractor, and I decided I didn't want to be. So I found what I do now, which is neurofeedback therapy. And it's a brain therapy. It's a form of biofeedback. So we actually do, it's called a brain map, or an assessment of the brain activity. We put this funky little cap on, record the brain activity, and then we offer a therapy that helps retrain the brain wave patterns.
I want to know how you got into that. But before we do that, let's talk about you growing up in California.
Yeah.
Your family being from the South, but you grew up out West. And it's not an uncommon story. A lot of people make these travels around the country to kind of set their roots up in different places. But what was it like growing up in California for you, especially knowing the history that your family had and kind of the reason why they left in the first place?
Yeah, well, I'm learning more as I get older about all the history of it. So for me, I just thought that my mom's family kind of like disowned her because of having a mixed child. And so she took off, and I was actually born while my mom was in a homeless shelter. So yeah, my mom, she's from money, but she didn't accept the help of her family, decided to go to San Diego, which you think about in San Diego, it's beautiful. Everyone wants to go to San Diego, everyone wants to stay in San Diego, but there are areas of San Diego that aren't nice, right? Like they're the hood.
Right.
So I actually grew up in the hood. I was the only white girl in the neighborhood. They call me White Girl Melissa, and the gang. There were gangs, there was drugs, there was all of it all around me, and so growing up for me was not a normal like, oh, look at this blonde hair, blue eyed girl from San Diego. Looks can be deceiving. I definitely was not raised as your average California girl. My mom was on welfare. She was able to buy her own home eventually in the hood. And I grew up there just watching my mom and sister hustle. My dad was a heroin addict, so he wasn't around. And then my brother was figuring out his own thing, but he's doing great now. So, it's definitely different. I would never want to grow up anywhere else besides San Diego. I love it. I actually opened a business there so I could go all the time if I wanted to. But yeah, definitely, it was amazing, and I learned a lot of my work ethic and my hustle and my grit all from the way I was raised. So, no matter no matter what, I'm grateful for what my mom did for us.
I'm curious because you talk about your mother and your sister hustling. What did that look like for you, and were there lessons that you took from watching them that apply to you in your entrepreneurial journey today?
Definitely. So, my mom, obviously being a single parent, and then my sister is 9 years older than me, so she took care of me. Like she
Okay.
was always around when my mom worked. So my mom never went to college. Actually, no one in my family went to college except for me. I am the only one that got a bachelor's and went on to get a master's. But so I was always taught like work, 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 and
Hmm.
then that's what you're supposed to do. No one in my family was an entrepreneur. I never learned how to run a business. It was always work to survive. That's really what I saw, and that's what I thought you had to do up until recently, really. I mean, so it was definitely a learning lesson of get your work ethic in, but how hard are you working, and how much are you growing at that same time? And they were just working, working, working until exhaustion. So then there was no time for anything else. And there was still no money because they were working for someone else. And I mean, not saying that people that work for other people, there's no money, but the positions they had was never an area that they could grow and make more and be even more abundant lifestyle. We never had that.
Mm. So, in all of this hustling and things of that nature, was entrepreneurship a thing that you aspired to even at that young age? Was it just something that seemed more normal to you, or were you pursuing more of a normal path? Because you mentioned that you went to college and things like
Yeah.
that. So, how did that evolve for you?
It was a little bit of both. So I remember my like when I was young, I'm one of my best friends. She lived in a trailer park, so I would go stay with her for like a week or whatever during the summer, and we would go around and go door knocking and see if they wanted us to pull weeds in their front yard, so we could get money to go buy candy and food or whatever. So
Hmm.
I think that was always something that just like I naturally was ingrained in me because I'm like, all right, let's make our own money, right? And then I, of course, worked. My first job was 14 years old. I worked at the beach. I sold seashells at the beach. So I'm like, why am I selling seashells? You could go out on the beach and go find some seashells, but tourists will buy anything. So that's what I did. And I would ride an hour and a half from like where I lived. You have to ride the city bus. So at like 14, I would ride the city bus an hour and a half to go work. And
Wow,
yeah, and then during high school, my freshman year, my first like real job was at Lids, the hat store.
I
So
know it well.
yeah, I was the only girl that worked there, and I was the highest sales associate in the nation.
Wow.
Yeah. So I always had this urge to like sell, I was comfortable with it, but I also had a lot of teachings around um, money being evil, or like, it's the root of all. I was raised very, very Christian. I was raised in Pentecostal churches. So I was
Mm.
raised like, fire and brimstone. You better ask forgiveness, you go into hell, that type of thing. But so I had to really, even as I started this business that I own now, I had to change my mindset that, like, as I become more successful and do make my own money, I can employ others, I could give more by making more. And so it's definitely been a journey of like getting a little bit of what I learned, but changing my thought process about it, and realizing like not everything you're taught is true.
I want to tap into that in a little bit, but let's talk about how you eventually started your business. And
Mhm.
is your business now your only business, or did you have other businesses before then?
No, I never started. I mean, I would do little things like I would try to set up at fairs, and I made like coasters and plant holders, like the artistic part of me. I sucked at it. Some people bought it though. But I never had a true business before this. Um,
Hmm.
I always just worked. And my goal, I mean, since I was in high school, I always wanted to be a chiropractor. So I knew I wanted to be in the healing field, the natural healing field. And then when I got to chiropractic school and I did a year of chiropractic, and I got to the part where you like start touching people's backs and spines and stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to touch people. Like I don't want. I don't want to be a chiropractor. But I know I want to heal. I want to be in that. I want people to know that they can heal themselves, and there are so many wonderful therapies out there. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I worked for a chiropractor. I left chiropractic school, and in Norcross, Georgia, I got a job as a front desk and back office of a chiropractic office, and he had neurofeedback in his office. So
Hmm.
that's where I was able to get my foot in. I had never heard of what I did. Most people have never heard of this. It's been around since the 60s, but it's just, it's not very well known yet. And
Right.
so that's how I got certified, is I worked under him for a year and a half.
What was it that drew you to learning more about neurofeedback? And what was it that made you decide, I want to do this for myself? I want to build a business around this.
Yeah. So I worked for him for a year and a half. As I mentioned, I got hired as the front desk, which I had done all since I was 19. And knowing I wanted to be a chiropractor, I'm like, I'm going to go work for chiropractors so I understand the business side of it. So in San Diego, I worked for different chiropractors. I worked for some here in Georgia. And then I was like, man, I don't want to work the front desk anymore. Let me learn about this brain stuff. And so Dr. Capaferi is his name. He's an amazing chiropractor in Norcross. Um, Great businessman, great chiropractor. Him and his wife were in the office, and then his son was working the neurofeedback. And he's like, okay, let me get you certified, and then you start talking to more people at the front desk about it, and let's see if we can get more people in, and then maybe you could start helping with the technician part. And so I was like, let's go all in then. So I got certified, and I was like, let me go market for you. Let me go out to like health fairs and do that kind of stuff, and let me go network for your business. So I did that for a year, and I grew his business enough for him to buy a second neurofeedback system. He actually moved the neurofeedback out of his chiropractic into its own space, so it looked more of its own business because I grew it so much. So I got to learn how to grow and educate people about neurofeedback while working for him. And then I was also the technician, so I got to work with the clients doing what I do now for him. And every day I'm like, I got to do this on my own. How do I do this on my own? And then finally I called the guy who created the system that we use. It's called Brain Core. And I called Dr. Guy and then Ziada, and I said, can I open my own business? And he's like, yeah, where do you want to start? When do you want to do it? I was like, what? How am I going to do that? He's like, you're already certified. I know you're going to be great for the business. Here's a payment option. So I was like, okay, well, I don't have any money because I was working like for 17 an hour. And I re-enrolled in school, and I got a student loan because I couldn't even qualify for a business loan, which is ridiculous. But got qualified for student loan, and I took my $4,000 stipend check and I started my own business.
Wow.
Yeah,
And how long ago was that?
9 years ago.
9 years ago. And so you had never run a business before. You had never even thought about it until the point at which you asked him.
Yeah, I never even took a business class or course or knew anything. I mean, I only worked for people's businesses and I didn't understand like what it all entailed. When someone works for you, like they only see how much they're getting paid and what their job is, they don't know all the crazy expenses to run a business.
Right.
So, and I didn't have a business loan. Like I said, I had $4,000 to my name. So I was like, let's do this. And it's not $4,000 to start this business. I'll tell you that. Like it's a lot more. It took me 3.5 years to pay it off.
So, yeah, so I'm really curious about what that process was like. You taking this money? Did you go out and rent an office? Did you have the what did you have to do to actually build the
Yeah.
business itself?
Yeah. So the neurofeedback itself, I had a chiropractor that I had worked for in Marietta, Georgia, about a mile west of the square, Dr. Scott Perlman, amazing man, also amazing chiropractor. He had an office space for rent. And so I rented it for $700 a month, which was kind of expensive. Now that I think about it, $700 a month for a room in his office. I got the equipment because I made my first payment. Luckily, BrainCore has payment options, so I made my first payment. So already down $1,700 from the floor. And then I immediately just started going out and networking because where I worked was 30 miles away. I didn't take any clients with me. I was completely from scratch. I was like, can I start my business? The next month I started my business. I didn't go out and start marketing first. I was like, let's just do this. Probably not the smartest thing to do in business, but I knew what I was going to do. So yeah, I just started getting out networking. I started learning more about different network groups in the area, getting my name out there. I made my own website at first. So I got the website up and someone was a mom, my very first client, a mom was researching neurofeedback in the area, came across my website. She paid in full for the first package of neurofeedback that I sell. So I made, $3,400 right away, put that towards the next few payments, the first year and a half, I didn't make any money. Luckily, my husband at the time had some money coming in and that helped a bit for home bills and stuff. But I had also, just at that time, we had a 3-year-old daughter and my 2 nieces moved in with me. My sister's kids moved in with me, and they were 17 and 18 at the time. So
wow, okay.
All that same time.
So you had a lot going on as you were trying to launch this business and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what it is that you were actually doing. Like, what is neurofeedback?
Sure.
And what was it that you were offering to people? Why were they coming to you to get this treatment?
Okay. Yeah. So neurofeedback is, like I mentioned, a form of biofeedback. Biofeedback helps us determine how our body's working through certain technologies like our Apple Watches and Fitbits and things like that. That's a form of biofeedback because it gives us heart rate, gives us temperature, gives us when our, feeling stressed, right? So that's biofeedback technology. Neurofeedback breaks it down even further to brain function. So not just heart rate, not just temperature, things like that, but brain function. So we put the cap on, we record the brain activity, and that it gives us a 14-page report of how the different lobes in the brain are functioning at the electric level. So the nerves in the brain, the neurons in the brain all fire and communicate with each other. That's what we're recording, is that pretty much the communication between the nerves.
So when people come to you, then what are some of the challenges that they're experiencing that or the problems that maybe they're having that they're looking to you to get answers for?
So neurological symptoms, and everyone's like, what is that? Well, neurological symptoms are things like ADHD, insomnia, anxiety, post-concussion is a big one, like memory loss and depression, PTSD. So everything you could think of about mental health, that's what we are able to quantify through this recording of your brain function. So most people are like, because think about it, like in mental health care, you go to a psychiatrist to get medications for your anxiety, depression, insomnia. You go to a counselor for cognitive behavioral therapy. very
Right.
important. The only industry is the mental health industry that doesn't do any type of objective data, which is like a scan or an x-ray, things like that, right? Before giving medication. So psychiatrists are doing testing and things like that, but that's all subjective. Like we fill out forms, we take tests, but
Mm-hmm.
we're not actually seeing how the brain is functioning. So when someone could actually quantify how the brain is firing, you could first of all get the right medication prescribed. You could do other therapies. You could improve certain therapies. I mean, it's just great information to have. Is you check your heart, you check your bones, you check your stomach. Why don't we check our brain, which runs our whole body?
Yeah, that's a great point. What are some of the things that maybe get lost? A lot of us don't. Our brains run our minds,
Mm-hmm.
and our minds are invisible, right? So our minds are kind of who we are, but we're not really thinking about it. And I'm not thinking about what is my mind doing right now.
Yeah.
What are some things that people are missing or don't understand about how the brain works and how important it is to really be able to optimize
Yeah.
our brain health?
Yeah. I think a lot of people right now, mindset is a huge thing. Everyone's talking about mindset. Of course,
Mhm.
mindset is important. The way I break it down is like this: you have your hardware and your software, right? And they work together. So if you have an old computer and you try to put new software on it,
Mhm.
that software is not going to run very well. So the software is like the mind stuff, right? Meditation, gratitude, all the wonderful things that we should do, the
Right.
mindset stuff. But if your hardware, which is your physical brain, is not working properly, all that stuff can take forever to actually work. Like it could take a long time. For some people, luckily, they take really good care of themselves, both mind, body, everything. But a lot of us, especially those that are stuck in anxiety and the insomnia and things like that,
Mhm.
mindset work can't necessarily fix your insomnia.
Mm.
Like, you know what I mean? That's your hardware. You actually have to work on the hardware, the physical hardware of the brain, and work on both. And just like you said, they do affect each other. So it's important that even though you're doing neurofeedback, you do all the other stuff, the counseling, the journaling, the gratitude. So I think more people need to recognize that it's not just like positive thinking and affirmations and journaling and all that, which is all great, but there's more to it, that you really have to take care of the physical brain and your physical body, your nutrition, and all of that.
It kind of sounds like if you have a high-powered sports car, no matter how nicely you talk to it, if you don't change the oil in the engine and you don't put gas in the car, it's not going to perform well, right?
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah, you definitely have to take care of it. So that's kind of our goal with Brain Train Centers, is just to educate people. Like, we will help you find counselors. We even have at a few of our offices are in counselors' offices, because we believe like that's very important to work on your mindset, but work on both is even, you're going to just get to that peak performance where you've always wanted to be.
Yes. As my peak performer comes in.
Oh, hello. How old is she?
This is my youngest. Alea is 4.
My daughter's turning 4 this Friday. This
Oh, wow.
Friday.
All right. Well, happy birthday to your daughter.
Yeah, her name's Elia. We just had her birthday party.
And how do
And
you spell her name?
Elia.
Ah, see, so Alea is Elea.
Oh my gosh, how
Mhm.
cool is that? We got to get them together.
There you go. There you
That
go.
would be so fun.
They'll have a blast together, I'm sure.
Oh, they would. They
Well,
would.
let's talk about children and their brains a little bit, because, and here's why I'm fascinated about that. As an entrepreneur, I think a lot about. Yes, yes. So as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking a lot about how I'm thinking, and also how I want to train my children to
Mhm.
create that awareness of their own gifts and the a way to be able to kind of think about the world and to see things that are going on. Um, when you look at children, and especially now that you're raising a little one,
Mhm.
what are some of the things that you're looking at around how to help her with her brain and her thinking to be able to be as powerful as she can be, even now and as she's growing up into the future?
Well, I'm definitely no like pro mom. I'm learning. I have an 11-year-old as well. I have 11-year-old daughter and a almost 4-year-old.
Okay.
And one thing we did with our 11-year-old, and we're doing again with our 4-year-old, so Mila's 11, Elia's almost 4, is we kept devices away from them.
Hmm.
Now, Mila's now 11, almost 12. She's on her device a little bit more. But what I've learned through the process of seeing many, many children that are diagnosed with ADHD, a lot of times it is just too much time on devices. I mean,
Hmm.
they say even before 12, you really shouldn't even put devices in front of your child. Like my phone, the only thing on my phone is a coloring game, no
Hmm.
other games. And my daughter gets 1 hour on her iPad a day.
Hmm.
And the 4-year-old Elia doesn't go on her iPad. And you know, I'm not a she doesn't go unless we're going on like a really long car trip or something, you know, something like that. But that's something both me and her dad are very strict about. We're definitely not liked by some of our friends. I mean, we would go out to dinners, kind of like how we were growing up. Like, you get a coloring pad and some crayons. Like, that's
Hmm.
what you get. Or you could sit and talk to us. Like, you're not going to go on my phone. You're not bringing an iPad with you to a restaurant. At dinner, we sit. We don't go. You know, that kind of thing. And I think it's more difficult as a parent nowadays, especially as an entrepreneur. We're so busy. We're busy parents. We just want, you know, to be like, here, go on this so I could get stuff done. But the problem is that device, the blue light, and the type of stimulation that it causes is just so bad for the brain, and is absolutely causing attention issues. It's causing social issues. Um, and it's just something that where I'm very strong believer is to, especially the little ones, not to giving devices to.
So
Yeah.
we're currently violating that rule, and we it's something that we tried with our oldest. It gets a little more difficult now, but let's talk about some of the things that you're doing instead of the devices. How are you trying to affect the positive development of their brain? Are there particular toys or games or things of that nature that are helpful?
Um, I take it back to the old school, always back to drawing, coloring, being artistic in that way. Um, I think a lot also because of the devices, our children have lost a lot of imagination skills that we've had when we were growing up. Like, I just remember sitting around and playing like with dolls or whatever it was and creating a whole story around that. And I feel like kids nowadays are not as comfortable doing that, or they don't realize that they can do that because they don't have the opportunity to. Um, and I think our parenting is also different. I mean, my mom was like so busy, she didn't sit down and play with me. So that's something I'm changing. I don't play with my daughter all the time, right? Like, she needs to be able to self soothe and like give herself attention alone, right? But there are times where I will get down on the floor and play with my daughter because that's important. I mean, that's how they learn skills of communication. They feel that they could trust you as a parent. So sometimes just realizing you have to stop what you're doing, stop that entrepreneur mind, stop that busy parent mind, sit down for even 5 or 10 minutes. And I think what parents will start to notice is less tantrums, less acting out due to wanting attention, that type of thing.
Hmm.
So I'm working on that myself. I mean, I'm talking about this, but I'm working on it myself. I'm definitely no pro at it. But it's things that we definitely try to work on, and more outside time, definitely. That's for sure.
I know that as an entrepreneur, because we're so busy and we're building this, and you talked about, turning off the entrepreneurial brain, which is hard to do because when you're running a business, you're always thinking about the next thing, the next idea, putting out the next fire. But there can be some guilt, right? We say we're building these businesses to create more freedom for our families and for our lives, and yet that often comes at a cost.
Yeah.
How have you learned to deal with managing that guilt of not being able to be there, of sometimes having to say to your children, hey, hold on, mommy is busy right now, or I've got something we've got to take care of?
Mm-hmm.
How are you managing that and creating balance, or maybe even imbalance in your life to be more present with your family instead of just juggling both at the same time?
Yeah, it is an imbalance for sure. Um, and I definitely I think as moms, we deal with the guilt even more. Sorry to say, but I think that's true. I mean, moms automatically have mom guilt from the start. And because we're so expected to be in the home and do all that, me and their dad are now separated. So what happens too is that I get them, it's actually been a little bit helpful, sad to say, but I get them 7 days and then he gets them 7 days. So the 7 days that I have them, I am focused on them and I do get less work done, but I'm okay with that because when I don't have them, I'm just like going back at it hard, because I don't have to worry about making, getting them to school, making dinner, doing all that. So that's been helpful for me. Unfortunately, not everyone gets a 7 day break from their kids, right?
Right.
So so when I wasn't getting that 7 days, I was even traveling a lot more too. And so that was even more of a guilt. And I was traveling because I had opportunities to speak or go learn and support others. And I think that they saw that, but I did have to make some big decisions on like really making sure that when I am with them, I'm really spending a lot of quality time with them. And then helping them understand. I mean, with an 11-year-old, I even have her help me sometimes with ideas about my business or, making them feel even part of that. Not that she could take over my business if she wants, but I don't know if that's where she would want to go. But even
Mhm.
her spending that time with me to talk about what's going on in the business and then, sharing with her friends what we do and things like that has been helpful as well.
So you've been running this business for about 9 years now, and you went from a novice to having, is it 8 locations that you have now across the country?
9.
9. See,
I
don't
just
let me
opened
see.
I just opened St. Augustine last month.
Awesome. So, what were some of the lessons that you had to learn about yourself? Not just about running a business, but what were some things you had to learn about yourself to be able to grow this and sustain this, to be able to scale it to this point?
Oh my gosh, I've been learning so much, especially the past year. I can't do everything alone because that was how I was always. I'm definitely the type of person. I'm like, I'm not going to count on anyone. People are like too flaky or they're not doing it fast enough. That type of thing. I had that mindset. I'm like, I'll just do it myself. I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. So over the past year, actually being part of Unleash You Now and meeting Michael and getting coaching from him, being able to find the right type of team to support you. I made
Hmm.
a few mistakes here and there, hiring too fast and firing too slow, that type of thing. So I'm still learning that. And being okay that people can do certain parts of my business better than me. So now I started off literally doing everything. I actually grew from my one little office space to a full wellness center at one point. So I rebranded a couple of years ago before COVID because I had a full wellness center. I didn't have multiple locations. I had a center and I
Hmm.
became almost like a landlord. So that definitely was like a learning thing. I'm like, I don't want to rent to anyone. I just actually want to go rent from people. So my whole business model changed, which then allowed me to grow in different ways where I could just focus on neurofeedback and bring it to different areas where there were other services that I could partner with. So all of our centers, brain train centers, are all within another wellness center of some sort, whether it be a chiropractor, a full wellness center with like nurse practitioners out in San Diego, to psychologists like up in Delaware. I'm in with Dr. Faber. So having that built-in rapport with other professionals has been amazing for my business. So learning to do that, keeping it simple, and then being able to delegate those things that I'm sure I could do because I did do them, but I actually don't enjoy doing, like answering phones or sending emails. So now I have people that help me with those kind of things. So being able to delegate and finding the right people to delegate to.
Let's talk about some of the bumps and bruises along the way, right?
Mm.
Um, Unless you just had smooth sailing and you started out with, and everything went perfectly. I'm going to assume that once or twice at least you've had some failures and some really rough patches. Can you
Yeah.
talk about maybe one or two of those and some of the lessons that you learned along the way about building a business and maybe even about yourself and how you grew in that aspect?
Yeah. I think one major bump was like closing my wellness center down.
Mhm.
I ended up, So you buy the neurofeedback equipment, you buy the territory to use the equipment in. And so I did all that. And then I got pregnant with Elia. And I was also running another company called Master Networks. It was a networking company. You know, Bobby Jones, he owns that up in Delaware. I was running that in Georgia, and I was going away from my wellness center, letting other people run my center, running Master Networks. And then that took all my time and attention away from my true passion. Like, I love connecting, I love networking, but that was really a tool to grow my business. And I lost sight of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became where I was resentful and all that kind of stuff. So then I ended up closing my wellness center down because I got pregnant. I had 367 members of Master Networks all across Atlanta. I was driving all the way from like Douglasville all the way to freaking Alpharetta, Lawrenceville, all that, just like completely took my focus away from what I was meant to do, which is neurofeedback.
Right.
And then I just gave my equipment to another provider. I didn't sell it, nothing.
Wow.
Okay. I know, so stupid. Now she is paying me
so generous. That's nice of her.
So ridiculous. Well, she is paying me a monthly fee now to help cover like software fees and stuff like that. But that was a huge lesson. I'm like, I'm never going to do that again. So now that I have developed brain train centers in all these locations, people are asking to partner with me. And so now it's like, I got to a point where I'm like, okay, people are coming to me, want to be part of this. And I can, I'm almost selling it almost like a franchise where people are coming in and paying me a fee to be part of my company that I created. And so even though I was very upset about getting rid of my wellness center, it all ended up turning out to be a whole new endeavor that is amazing. And now I'm completely focused. So I not only run Brain Train, I also train others how to do it. I sell the equipment for Brain Core as well, and just do a bunch of other stuff, all focused around neurofeedback.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So I want to ask you another question, and I know it's delicate. Perhaps you mentioned the fact that you were married when you started this business, and now you're separated. For entrepreneurs, we know the balance, the juggling act, right? And so the ups and downs of building a business can strain a relationship.
Yeah.
Are there any lessons that you've learned along the way, maybe that you would share with another entrepreneur as they're navigating building this business, but also having a relationship that they feel is important to them, but it's a challenge, kind of doing the dance between the two?
Yes. I think life already is hard enough in a relationship with the outside world. Then you add kids to it. I mean, then you add a business and different lives. He was a professional rugby player and amazing dad, amazing man. We're both very good friends still. And so he was traveling. Even when I started my business, he was across the whole world playing in World Cups and doing his thing. And I was doing mine. I think that's important, that you both have your passions and you're going for them. But just like you have to take time out for your kids, you have to take time out for each other. And that's something we didn't do. Like, we didn't go on dates. We didn't go spend just adult time together to talk about life, to do things that we enjoyed together. And I think sometimes that might even be growing a business together. But I think also you need a little bit of that imbalance of going on a date and not talking about business, going out, having some drinks, having some fun, having a good dinner, just spending adult time together. Pay for a babysitter if you don't have family here. I think that's so important because you lose sight of like the passion that brought you together in the first place. And sometimes it just starts to fizzle out, and that's okay too. But I think if you're with the right one, then spending those times together is really important.
It brings to mind something else. And I think that's really great advice. It brings to mind something too, that maybe a lot of times we talk about delayed gratification. And I'm talking about this in terms of brain health, right? Sometimes we believe that we have to earn the right to treat ourselves well. Can you talk about that in terms of how our brains maybe operate, how it relates to the success of your business as well as your family or relationships? Have you learned any things around that?
Oh, well, our frontal lobe has a lot to do with impulse control. And
Mm,
I'm the type of person, I'm going to be very honest here. When I want something, I'm going to go get it. And so and I don't think about it always at first. And sometimes I'll say things that I shouldn't say because I didn't think about it. And that's my frontal lobe not working very well.
mm,
So, just like I said earlier, I took my $4,000. I had no plan. I had no clients, no marketing to do my business. I don't recommend anyone do that unless you know for sure that you're going to make it work. But it is definitely hard. Having support, having a plan, but also not getting stuck on the plan that you've made
right.
is also the thing. So it's like there is, I will say, a balance of gratification is like you do deserve it, go for it. Don't take too long going for what you want, but also make a plan and make sure you're doing it properly. And then you'll have a little less stress, I would say. You're still going to have stress no matter what, which is a good thing. You got to have stress. That's what keeps us going. So there's that. I think,
Talk. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because a lot of people think of stress as being negative. We're trying to
oh,
eliminate stress so much in our lives. How can stress contribute to you actually being more successful?
yeah. So there's different types of stress, and eustress is a good stress, right? So um, it I think it's just the way that we process it. And when
Mm,
our brains are working properly, we can process stress. Stress is an everyday
mm,
thing. Like it just depends on how we process it. So my stress of being stuck in traffic is going to be a lot less stress for someone that has to do that every single day and just, wakes up with the mindset like, damn, I got to go drive in traffic. So I think the way we look at it, the way we process it, and how it truly affects us in a long term. Like me being stuck in an hour of traffic is not going to affect my life 10 years later. So I think being able to process that information is important too. Just kind of living in the present and realizing that nothing lasts forever. Um, and some stresses are not good, definitely. Like when we don't take care of our bodies or when we put them under too much stress, they shut down, right? We get sick, we can't function the next day, we can't. So that's where I always talk about like how important sleep is. So if you're not sleeping, your brain's not healing from the stress and the toxins that we accumulate throughout the day. So the more sleep we get, the better we function the next day. Um, Good sleep, not more sleep. I don't mean like you need 12 hours, but good, healthy, regulated sleep. So there's definitely good stressors. Exercise is a good stress on the body, but if you exercise too hard, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to pull things like that. So just being aware of the types of stress that you put yourself purposely into, or the ones that just unfortunately come your way, and being able to know that it doesn't last forever, and that if you process it maybe from a different point of view, that you'll get through it.
You mentioned the fact that uh, we can exercise our bodies and we can enjoy ourselves in that way. Are there ways that we can, either through stress or other things, actually injure our brains? And maybe it's in some ways that we're not even thinking about.
Yeah. I'm going to say one that a lot of people I don't think truly think about. It's our food, our
Hmm.
nutrition. And they just think like, oh, especially entrepreneurs, I'm in a hurry, or parents, I'm in a hurry, I'm busy, let's drive through McDonald's. Like
Hmm.
what we put into our body immediately affects our whole central nervous system, our brain, our spine. Then it affects everything else in our body, right? Our
Hmm.
gut. So I think more people need to be more aware of what they're putting in their mouths and how they eat. And I don't, I mean, I definitely, I shop at Whole Foods and I will spend more. And that's the thing is we're told like organic, healthy food is expensive, but it truly isn't if you buy properly and if you are buying fruits and vegetables, because if you add up how much you're spending on sugary cereals, it's going to
Hmm.
be as much as a bag of apples. So
Hmm.
that's the reality of it. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be at Whole Foods. You go to Aldi, Lidl, like Trader Joe's, Kroger, all these places now have organic and they have specials and all that. So I think, especially our fruits, there's something called the Dirty Dozen, and it's mostly fruits and vegetables, mainly the fruits that have like no hard shells on them, like oranges and pineapples have the rough. So those aren't as important to get organic. It's still important to get them organic, but like things like apples and grapes and strawberries, berries, get those organic because of all the pesticides that are on the non-organic. But I think more people should look into it more and not just think it's a money thing.
Mm.
It's definitely not. What we put into our mouths is very important for our brain. Exercise is the other thing. I just started getting back into my old routine of exercise. It feels so good. I'm sleeping so much better at night. I wake up feeling rested. I'm focused the next day, and people forget even just a walk around the neighborhood for 15, 20 minutes, how what that could do for your brain. So maybe taking time to even put it in your calendar as an entrepreneur to get outside in the middle of the day, go for a walk, that kind of thing.
No, I think that's really, really valuable advice. When people are coming to you and you're kind of able to trace some of the effects that you're reading in the brain, after you've been able to kind of monitor and work with them, what are some of the results you see on the other side of it after you've been working with them for a little while and done the treatments and done the feedback and kind of started to be able to read? What are some of the results that you've been able to see from people?
What's really cool is after the therapy. So by the way, the therapy, really quick description of it. And if anyone wants to go on the website, there's like a 2-minute video showing how the neurofeedback works. But what's
the website again?
BrainTrainCentersInc.com. A little bit long, but BrainTrainCentersInc.com. And there's a little YouTube video, like 2 minutes long, of the videos of how to see what neurofeedback does. So what happens really quick, once we get that results from the initial assessment, which is called a QEEG, it's a quantitative electroencephalogram, which really means that we're quantifying the electric signals of the brain, right? So then we get that, and it shows 2 areas of the brain that need exercise. So that's why we call it brain training. Neurofeedback is a brain training modality. So what happens is they come in, they sit in the chair, and we put little sensors on their head. Now, the sensors don't shock. We're not doing like magnetic therapy or anything like that. We put the sensors on. They're picking up the brain activity from those sensors, and then it's looped to a screen in front of them. So every time their brain goes into the proper pattern that we are trying to train more of, the screen in front of them is giving them a positive feedback, which would be like a bright screen and loud noise. So they're watching like their favorite show. So every time they're focused and calm and concentrated, the screen's bright and it's loud. But as soon as the brain goes into a negative pattern, the screen shuts down and the volume goes down. So it's giving a positive, negative feedback directly to the brain function. So that's where the feedback comes from in neurofeedback. It's feeding back to the actual neural connections of the brain. So they sit and do this 2 to 3 times a week in office, or they rent home units and they could do it at home faster and do it every day. So that's the therapy. We're not sitting and talking. We're not counselors. We do neurofeedback. That's what it is. 30 minutes at a time. It's actually exercise for the brain. So people, some of the side effects could be like people get tired. They might get a little bit of a headache. They need to drink more water because it's really exercising the brain to work in a new function. So then after they do, let's say 30, 40 sessions over 3-4 months, then we do a new brain assessment. And then we're able to see the before and after of where the brain function actually changed. So then we're seeing it on a report on the analysis. And then we're also hearing from them like anxieties come down, or they're sleeping instead of 4 hours a night, they're getting 6 or 7 hours a night. So those are the types of benefits that we're hearing from our clients. You know, their children are focusing without medication, or they're able to calm themselves, like sensory. We work with some children with autism, so sensory becomes more regulated and things like that as well. We've even heard some children with autism start to speak more. Those are, yeah. So we've had everything from brain injuries, like extreme brain injuries, like almost coma, and then them starting to move and make noise a little bit more, all the way to just peak performance of like CEOs or professional athletes that just want to get more in the zone. So we work everywhere in between.
Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because if you are an entrepreneur or a high performer in your profession and you really want to be able to perform better, what are some of the patterns that you see, maybe some negative patterns that you see that you're having to retrain? And can you just talk a little bit about that? Because the way that we think and the way that our brains think is very often invisible to us. We see the problems,
Yeah.
the symptoms that come up. But sometimes it's just like that's just how we think things are. We get acclimated to that.
That,
So can you talk a little bit about those two extremes? Like you want to be performing at your best, but you're not.
yes. So a big, like you said, especially entrepreneurs, we do this. We're like, oh, that's just the way it is. Oh, I just don't sleep. That's the way it is. That's a
Mm-hmm.
big one for entrepreneurs because our brains are going. We're thinking about what we have to get done the next day and how the day went and things like that. But that is not healthy for us. And we can do imagine like some of the top performers, if they slept even better, that they would just go to the next level. It's just craziness. So not sleeping is not normal for an entrepreneur. It's not a healthy thing. It's not something to be proud of. I know there's a lot of stuff out there where people are like, oh, I only need 4 hours of sleep. First of all, you're not even going through all the regular sleep cycles in 4 hours like you should be. So no, that's not good. So they do that. Insomnia is a big one for the entrepreneurs that come in. And then those that are just, they do let the stress get to them. So then they become a little anxious or they become unmotivated at times. Like they get kind of stuck in this fog of stress or whatever it may be, almost where it looks like depression, but it's really just lack of motivation because of letting that stress build up and not dealing with it. So that's another big one. What else with peak performers? I think those are the major ones that we see with the entrepreneurs is the insomnia, and then they start to get this lack of motivation or like the ups and downs. We all have those, but sometimes they get stuck in the down of it. So
Yes, I mean, and that's a really important thing because if you get stuck in those patterns for a long period of time, obviously your performance goes down, but it has real world consequences, right? You
sure.
start making mistakes and things of that nature. Have you seen people come in? Do people typically wait until it's very very extreme before they're doing that, or do you see people that are, you know, like the person who's in peak condition and like I'm joining the gym because I want to stay in peak condition?
Yeah.
What does that spectrum kind of look like, and how do you counsel people as they're coming in to deal with their brains?
Yes. So I've had a little bit of both. Definitely more of the ones that have waited so long or they've tried everything else first, right? And they're just still stuck. Actually, up in Delaware, I had a client who has been on this 1.5 year journey of bettering his brain and health. And he chose to do neurofeedback just to take him to that next peak performance. That was one. And he thought that he already was sleeping well. And then he did neurofeedback. He slept even better. Like that's some of the feedback he gave me. So he got more done. He focused better. He's actually making some decisions on changing his business up that he hadn't thought about before. So it's kind of opened this like portal of change and growth in him, both in his personal life and in business. I don't have many clients like that. I would love more clients like that peak performance. Almost, we want to call it like preventative care, those that are really believers of taking care of yourself before it gets to that point. And I wish that our world did that a little bit more, but unfortunately it doesn't. So we do see mostly the ones that are just like at their, last straw, wit's end, and ready to finally make a change.
But it's not too late. If yeah, it's never too late is what you're saying.
Never too late. I've worked with as old as 86 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, 86. Youngest is 4.5 up to 86. And the 86-year-old was on depression meds for many, many years. And I do want to say we never tell people to come off their medications when they do the neurofeedback. But what happens is the brain starts to change chemically and hormonally. And so the medication that they're on usually starts to be too strong for them. So their prescribing doctor, if they're great doctors, will slowly start to bring that person down off of their meds in a safe way while they do the neurofeedback.
That's really important then if you're on medication and you're wishing you really want to get off of it, because obviously that's the ideal thing to be living without it.
Yeah.
So okay. So it's a progressive type of therapy as well.
It is. And again, like we would never tell anyone to not take their meds. We want them to stay on it and make sure that they're working with their doctor along with us. And so it is important that they do that. And some people, that isn't their goal. I mean, that's something you ask, like, how do we talk them through getting started with us? Is like, we do find out their goals. Like, if they are on meds, do you want to come off the meds, or you're good with it? You just want better performance. But here's some things that could happen. Side effects could happen, things like that. So it is important that we know what their expectations and goals are. And I think every entrepreneur should do this, no matter what service you're offering. Find out your client or customer's expectations and goals, so then you're able to meet those or not meet those, and maybe send them to someone else, which I've done before.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Melissa, this has been very, very informative, very, very helpful. And I love you sharing your journey as well, because you've built something here that is not just a successful business, but it's an important business. Something that's very, very impactful for people. What is maybe one or two lessons that you would like to leave with entrepreneurs who are in their own journey, right? Maybe they're at the beginning and they're trying to figure it out. Maybe they are a little bit further along, but they're kind of stuck, and they want to be able to continue to get more momentum, continue to move forward towards the passion or recapture the passion that they've had. What are one or two lessons that you would leave with people as we get ready to wrap up today?
I would say something I learned recently is to invest in yourself, not just in your business, because you are what runs your business. So if you're not investing in yourself, whether that's eating healthier, working out, taking care of your brain, taking care of your body, or just choosing to relax sometimes and do nothing, it's okay to do that, because your business is still going to be there. Clients are still going to be coming. There's plenty of business to go around. So I think that's one lesson I definitely learned. Like, if you're in your passion, you're serving the right people, they're always going to be coming to you. So take care of yourself, because if you want to serve others, you have to be healthy to do that. And just take those steps. Like, I may have not have done it the right way with my $4,000, but I made a move and I made it happen. So if there is something new you want to add to your business, maybe just take that first step, whether it's writing it down, but then actually doing some action to make it happen. So don't get stuck and just not do anything.
Love it. Love it. Melissa, how can people find you? They can find one of the brain train centers in their area.
Yeah.
And how can they just follow you and learn more about you as well?
Yeah. If you want to friend me on Facebook, Melissa Hergert. My Instagram is Brain Train Centers CEO. That's my Instagram. Brain Train Centers Inc. You could reach out through email through that. We have a little chat box. You could ask questions and get to one of us. But we do have offices all the way from Atlanta, Florida, Hilton Head, Las Vegas, San Diego, and Delaware. And hopefully a few more opening in the next year, maybe Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, few in the works. So, and if you are interested in partnering up and if you are in the health field and want to add neurofeedback, definitely reach out and we could either partner up, or I could help you get started with the equipment that I use through the company I use.
How many centers would you like to have, in your dream scenario?
Okay, so that's the thing. I don't write it down. I'm saying write it down. Because I feel like if I write down a number, then like I don't have a cap. I don't have a cap on it. Who knows? I mean, the reality and the way I've structured my business now, where it's partnerships, it's not just me. It is me behind it and my creation, but finding the right people that want to partner and just being able to expand that way has been amazing. And so, I'm open to whoever is on the same, wave as me. Let's get it done.
I love it. I love it. So we're gonna write down 1,000 centers in the next 10 years.
Okay.
Let's make it happen.
That works too.
Let's do it.
I might then have to truly turn it into a franchise, and I'm not trying to do that yet. I don't want to pay franchise fees.
I hear you. Well, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and I love the way you're building it now. And we want to really thank you for coming and sharing your story, sharing your experiences, and teaching us more about our own brains, how we can stop injuring our brains and actually take care of ourselves in a more powerful way.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
Absolutely. Thanks to all of you who have stopped by to watch this episode of Power Lunch. Hopefully, it's been valuable for you as well. Be sure to check out Melissa, follow her, and learn more about how you can treat your brain much better. And if you're in an area where there is a brain train center, make sure you make an appointment, stop by and see her, check her out.
Yes.
For everybody else, thanks for stopping by again. I'm Frederick Douglass Bussey. As always, ever forward.